Hey folks, welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast with Wayne. I'm Patrick. We're going to stick on NFL today. Going over our NFL predictions for 2023, 2024. We're going to cover both conferences. Wayne with the AFC, I'll take the NFC. We'll weigh in on each other's picks and analysis and things like that. And then we'll round it out with our NFL awards, going through pretty much the whole lot here. So, yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy the NFL from us. So, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Wayne to cover his first division within the AFC.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Man, this is gonna be exciting. All we've been waiting for this for all summer long, I feel like. So a lot of fun stuff has been happening. But yeah, I'm gonna start with the AFC North, which, man, this division is gonna be nuts, I feel like. I'll start with the bottom and kind of work my way up there, kind of, leave you all in suspense there. And the team I'll start with, this team can either win the entire Super Bowl, like win the whole thing, or be like maybe win 5 games or something like that. This definitely is going to be a tough division, but yeah, this team right here is the Browns that I got finishing last year. A lot of question marks with Deshaun Watson, right? Didn't perform the best when he did play. I think like the last half of the season when he was with the Browns. But this roster is loaded, and I think that's what kind of makes me think like this team could win the Super Bowl. It's one of the best rosters out there, both on the offensive side and on the defensive side as well. They added Zadarius Smith on the defensive side to play opposite of Myles Garrett. They didn't see too much production from Clowney, so adding in Zadarius Smith, who had like 10 sacks, I believe, last season, to combine that with their killer offensive line, as well as Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, full season with them. It's like this team could definitely make a push, but I kind of have them going to like 7, 8 games, I think, is what I have them. Just it's a very tough division, and very very competitive there. So I just have them finishing last. Steelers, I have finishing third here. Great defense, I think. And saw some nice movement coming from both Kenny Pickett and the offensive side. I just think they got one more season of seasoning to basically mature a little bit and get more continuity there, just to figure things out. So have them going third there. And then my AFC team that I always like to cheer for. I went back and forth here, but I'm going with the Ravens. Adding in, Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator coming from Georgia, to kind of spell off the rule and gruel of Greg Roman and that kind of anemic offense, just like pounding and running and making Lamar Jackson run a lot over there. So it'll be interesting. I think this will be an interesting season with basically, Lamar Jackson. I think this roster on the offensive side is like the most talented weapons he's ever had before. His MVP season, right, where he was healthy, he didn't have too much, honestly, there. I think Snead was like his number 2 wideout or whatever. And, yeah, now he's got Odell Beckham, Aguilar as well. And then Zay Flowers, who everybody's excited about, I think is going to be something. Defensive side, though, younger, although maybe healthier. They've always battled injuries, I felt like. So, David Ojabo, that'll be interesting what happens with him. A lot of people thought he was going to be like a top 5 pick last season and got hurt. So, him paired up, I think, then with Owe, like on the opposite side, like that could be, an interesting combination there with the O brothers, on the sides there. So, yeah, and full season out with Roquan Smith on the defensive side as well. It's like, just a lot of unknowns, but some things are still intact there. Marlon Humphrey, one of the best corners, and then Marcus Williams too. So secondary is fairly solid. Cornerback, Rakia Sin, maybe not the greatest, but I don't think he'll hurt the Ravens here. And last but not least, got to pick the Bengals here. This is probably the most talented Bengals team, I feel like, since Burrow's been with them. So for me, adding in Orlando Brown there, I think was a key signing. and they still kept it intact. Higgins, Chase, and Boyd there at wide out. So, for me, I gotta pick the Bengals here. And then yeah, their defense, like they have a young secondary, but it's really talented too. So yeah, for me, gotta pick the Bengals here. All right, Pat, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you have the Browns winning? Like, want to hear what you think?
I mean, I'm not going that crazy. I think I have the Browns above the Steelers in terms of the 3-4 parts of this, the standings. I think that Pittsburgh is on the rise. I like their defense as well. I'm wondering how much Kenny Pickett can bring to the table this year in year two. Can he take an additional step with Pickens and get Deontay Johnson on the board with a couple touchdowns this year? I think he had zero last year. They're well coached. It's a strong organization. I did feel like Cleveland went out and addressed some serious needs on their defensive line. Like you said, with Zadarius Smith, they also got interior defensive lineman Dalvin Tomlinson. They went out in the draft and grabbed. Actually, I should correct myself in that they grabbed Houston's Okoronkwo on the defensive line as well. He was a guy who was very strong to kind of finish out the second half last year in terms of pressures and blitzes and such. So it's like they've really kind of focused that need in there on the pass rush, which, when you're going up against Burrow and especially a guy like Lamar, you're going to need to have that fortified. That said, there is something to be said about Deshaun Watson and kind of his struggles, I guess, second half of last year, not looking like the guy who came over, from the Houston Texans prior to suspension and everything like that. So, I don't know. Does he have the grit? Does he have the moxie to get him over the top in this type of a division? I think that's going to be pretty tough. I'm with you in terms of the top two. I think Cincinnati is the cream of this division. I do think, Baltimore is probably coming with a better defense this year than Cincinnati, but in the same sense, I have some trust issues when it comes to Lamar Jackson. I think part of it is his health. You just never know how many games he's going to be there. And I think the other part is, he does have these new weapons now, but, he's had Marquise Brown in the past. He's had other guys that, have looked like threats, like even a Rashad Bateman. I don't know if he's gotten the most out of him just yet so far in his career. So, he really needs to, take that additional step as a passer, maybe just a sharper quarterback, even if it's not just all with the pass game itself. It's just, I think he's got to bring a little bit more intelligence to the table to be able to kind of get out of scramble mode and more or less utilize the weapons around him, especially as he gets older. So I have both those top two going into the playoffs for sure, but I think this is going to be a dogfight of a division for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I 100% agree with the Ravens and Lamar. They've always battled the injuries. I think that's always been the blocker for them the past couple of seasons. And then Lamar in the playoffs with the pressure against a really competitive team just hasn't been able to get over the hump there. But I do wonder how much of that has to do with losing some key players on the offensive side from injury too, and also on the defensive side as well. So, but with this team on the defensive side, younger, not as experienced, I think is the biggest question there. So it's not the most talented team, but if they can just be healthy. This Ravens team could definitely make a run for it, but yeah, still some question marks there. And then the Bengals though, you got to tip your cap towards them and being able to retain Higgins, going into the season here. So that should be a fun team to watch, I think. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Again, moving on here then to a little bit of a weaker division. I got the AFC South. So, we got three rookie quarterbacks that could potentially be playing in this division here. Last and least, I got the Texans here. CJ Stroud doesn't really have the most explosive weapons, I think, at the moment. Does have a pretty offensive line, though, with Tunsil and Shaq Mason. But there's so many question marks, I think, and just of overall skill, overall talent that they do have. A lot of promising talent, I'll add there. Has Will Anderson on the defensive end side there, and was it Petrie as well as one of my one of the best nickels in the game, I feel like. So, but yeah, just not their season. I think it will be competitive though. I'm not saying that the Texans, Titans, Colts, right? Jaguars. I don't. I think there's gonna be some parity in here, but I just have the Texans last in this division here. Um, Next one up, I will say I kind of went back and forth on this, but I'm gonna have to go with the Titans here. They're only getting older. you know, will we see Will Levis, in the second half of the season? That could certainly kind of kill their record some there. Got to respect Vrabel as a coach, but aging team, solid defense still, but I just feel like there's a lot of question marks heading into the season than there was maybe in previous seasons. And yeah, having that Will Levis kind of wild card there, like I think it's going to be about time. Or there's going to be a countdown. I feel like to when they're going to bring him in. So Will Levis, I definitely think having him in there as a rookie quarterback, maybe not going to win like all the games that he's in there. I believe so. And then the next team I have here, Colts actually. Rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson, right? This should be interesting, but they do have a new head coach, came from the Eagles and everything, and you know what? They had I think the number one rushing attack there, and I feel like there could be some potential in terms of utilizing Anthony Richardson, getting him rolling out, utilizing those legs, right? Like kind of just making sure that he's actually like utilizing his strengths there. And he may not be the best passer, but he also doesn't have to be, and he does have big targets in Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. That being said, still a rookie, and don't think that they'll make too much of a noise in that division. But hey, finishing second, I feel like rookie quarterback. I think that's a good step in the right direction there. And then the Jaguars, I think everybody is picking them. I think Vegas has them as like one of the top favored winners for their own division, just because just a lot less question marks. Trevor Lawrence there, another season under Doug Peterson, adding Calvin Ridley, who I think we talked about from the fantasy perspective, and then also their defense too. Another season for Trayvon Walker, maybe takes the next step there. That could be something. So for me, yeah, got to go with the Jaguars. With that team, that roster, that defense. Overall, I feel like they have a pretty solid roster overall. I think both on the offensive side and also on the defensive side as well. So yeah, Jaguars number one here.
Yeah, I'll agree with you up top. I think the Jaguars easily run away with this division. I think the division is so winnable for them based on the other three teams that I see them kind of inching their way up in seeding as well in the AFC. I think I have them as like the third seed based on who they have to go against in their division. I actually think they might end up with a better record than the Bengals this year, just because the Bengals are going to kind of have to grind it out, gruel it out within their division. But I guess as far as the seeding goes below the Jaguars, who I just think based on a superior offense is going to pick every one of those teams apart. Tennessee is probably next in line for me, just because their defense graded out at least through the Ringers' most recent rankings as being a top 15 defense in the league. I know Indianapolis and Houston rated pretty low down in the rankings in the 20s or so. So I guess with that, I mean, I see Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins as being a competent enough offense based on the competition within that division, where they have enough leadership there to at least inch out what I think the Colts and Texans are bringing this year. I think, for Houston, for one, obviously new quarterback, they're bringing a new head coach who I think will do a lot for, a young defense and kind of getting them where they need to be. But, like you were saying, with Robert Woods being maybe your top wide receiver, outside of Nico Collins, I mean, that's one thing. Dalton Schultz had an off year for the Cowboys. He comes over as well. I think it's kind of a learning year for them. I'm relying a lot on Dameon Pierce to be kind of the focal point of that offense. But I think they're gonna have their struggles for sure. And then I have Indianapolis actually at the bottom of the standings this year. I think all the juju for that team is going south. I mean, Jonathan Taylor wanting out. I think they're going to have Minshew started off, who, I think is solid as being a veteran and everything, and kind of will hand the ball to Anthony Richardson at some point. But the defense is, graded 29th in some of the rankings I've looked at. Their defensive line is kind of in shambles. I mean, Shaquille Leonard, we don't know what we're getting really anymore out of him. I know they lost Stephon Gilmore in free agency. So they're really starting to thin out, especially on defense. And, with a new quarterback who's kind of, got a rushing focus to him, you might not have Jonathan Taylor. And beyond Pittman, I don't know if like McKenzie and Alec Pierce are like next level type athletes or playmakers in that sense. So I just have a lot of concerns there, and I do think Shane Steichen's the right guy, and I think that that'll be a good coach for them, kind of moving forward and developing Richardson. I just think it's going to be like a Bears type season where you have Justin Fields, running all over the field, but you have nothing to surround him with.
Yeah, and no, that's a fair point. I think the Colts definitely are this kind of wild card of, they definitely have a rookie running back, or not running back. I mean, people will call him a running back in Anthony Richardson, right? A rookie quarterback. Uh, but I think the one thing is he has a pretty decent offensive line. He has a run focused coach there, so and then has some with Pittman definitely a weapon there. The Jonathan Taylor thing, yeah, that totally makes sense because he may not be with this team for too long, and I think he'll probably miss some games too. I think like the first couple games as well. So yeah, there's a lot of question marks I think for them, but I just think that this division, I'm not. Maybe it's just me. I'm just kind of counting when this Titans team is gonna age out or go on a decline. It's like, bringing in DeAndre Hopkins and everything. Still a talented wide receiver. I think they called for, the Bears to bring him on, but like, is he going to be an X factor for the passing game there with the tight ends, with Tannehill and such? I don't know, but Vrabel is a solid coach, so that definitely could be a thing, and especially with that defense, a lot of things could swing their way there. So, yeah.
But when I put them in second place, don't get me wrong here. I think they're a 6 to 7 win team. I just think Houston, and Indianapolis are going to be probably anywhere from 3 to 6 wins in that sense too. So it's like I have this being a very top heavy type division with Jacksonville up at the top. I mean, I feel like Jacksonville gets into the double digit wins. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to say easily, but I think it's like they've got like one of the easiest paths I think into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, for sure. And there's been a lot of Trevor Lawrence hype, I guess, in terms of potentially getting an MVP. Like, I think he's oh, you look at all the names on there. You see Mahomes, you see Jalen Hurts, Burrow, and stuff like that. And you see, oh, Trevor Lawrence. Because of that, there's a feeling that he can definitely pad up his stats a little bit, especially with adding Calvin Ridley in there too. So, and then yeah, having an awesome record. I think I have him like go maybe 11-6 there, but yeah, there's definitely I think a lot of good momentum there for the Jaguars. So moving on to the AFC East here. Again, starting from the bottom. This is definitely be tough because I think there's a lot of variables in play for this division particularly, but I have the Pats being last here. And I don't know, there's just a lot of questions at quarterback. Is Mac Jones the person? They did bring in Bill O'Brien to help out with the offense, and he's had success with like lesser quarterbacks. So that could be something to just look into. That it's a Belichick team though, so that the defense is going to be hard nosed. Have a solid running back there in Stevenson, and then Juju can be a solid wide receiver there. But yeah, I just feel like that offense can definitely be anemic at times. Maybe not as talented compared to also the rest of their very tough division. So I have them last there. And then moving on to the next team, I got the Dolphins here. They added Jalen Ramsey, but I believe he's going to be hurt for maybe like half the season or a good chunk of the first half of the season there. So that value, as even though he's one of the top cornerbacks in the game, that defense has decent players there, but losing that Jalen Ramsey going into the season, there's a lot of like, oh, this team could definitely be there. I just don't see it at this point. So, and there's also those questions with Tua. He's like one bad hit away from like this team is screwed basically. So, I think Skylar Thompson is still like their quarterback too. So, I don't know why they didn't necessarily invest in like, a decent veteran quarterback of some sort. Maybe they just didn't want to scare Tua or anything or something like that. But this team does have a lot of offensive weapons. With McDaniels having that speed, I just think that there's some other teams that I'll be going up talking about later that just have a little less question marks there. But this Dolphins team, though, surely could run things up if they had Jalen Ramsey. They could have maybe make a surprise a little bit here and there against these top teams there, but I just didn't see it. So, and then the next team I have on here, a little bit of a surprise, I guess. I'm gonna pick the Bills. I think they might regress a little bit. You know, they struggled a little bit when Von Miller was out because of the lack of pass rush. This team did add Leonard Floyd, who I think had 9 sacks last season. But I remember him from like the Bears, and then also what he was doing with the Rams. He needs like a good pass rusher to kind of complement him. I feel like, and without Von Miller, I just don't see the on the defensive side, on the defensive line particularly, a solid pass rusher that can help out Floyd there. And then Von Miller too. He came off ACL surgery. I think he's on the PUP list, so he's going to miss a couple games too in the beginning of the season. They might split the first 4 games. I think honestly, I think they have a couple games on the road there, and then the Dolphins they face at home. So a lot of variables there. I think could happen. Yeah, they were going against the Jets and the Commanders away. So and can definitely talk about the Commanders. Eventually, but yeah, I like the Jets. I have the Jets winning this division actually. This team last season, without a quarterback, right? With like a bottom, 5 quarterback play, I feel like they were making a run. They were beating some really good teams, have some playmakers on defense, have one of the top defensive linemen there. Quinn Williams, have one of the top cornerbacks in the game already, year 2 now going into Sauce Gardner. And then they also have Garrett Wilson, who got 1,000 yards last season as a rookie, and have Dalvin Cook on the offensive line, on the running back side to pair up with Breece Hall, who's hopefully healthy. There's just a lot of talent I feel like on this team to look forward to. I feel like, and for me, yeah, just a lot less question marks I think with the Bills. Yeah, their defense right now just not there, and then Stephon Diggs, still think he's gonna have a solid season, but he's only getting older there. So yeah, gonna go Jets here. Think they have a little bit more of an upward trajectory with their 39-year-old quarterback there, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I can't agree on this one, man. I got a completely different mix going, but I think I gotta start. I mean, I don't know where I want to start with this one. I mean, I personally have the Bills still returning and winning that division. Like PFF and the other defensive ranking metrics I've seen have placed the Bills in the top 7. At least defensive line, they say their depth is very deep, even beyond Von Miller. Gregory Rousseau was a really good edge rusher last year, but I think it's more or less strength in numbers and having, McDermott's schemes to kind of keep them in games. I think that having Hyde and Boyer back there, just as veterans, also helps. I mean, on offense, I don't think a lot's gonna change for them. Josh Allen is still incredibly productive. I see him doing that with Diggs. I mean, obviously they drafted Dalton Kincaid, who kind of can slot in as a slot receiver. He can be a tight end. He's going to go with Dawson Knox. I just think, adding Latavius Murray and dropping the smaller Singletary, I think they're really like emphasizing power on offense, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like, I think that there are some shortcomings with the Bills that I'll get to, I think, later in this episode, but I think in the same sense, I think there's too much of a roster there for them to kind of fall off their perch. I guess my second seed is Miami. I like Miami this year. I like their explosiveness. I'm excited about Tua being there, and they did grab Mike White, who was, at least when spelling Zach Wilson, was doing a competent enough job for the Jets. I mean, still wasn't good enough, but in the grand scheme of things, I think Tua can stay healthy this year. If he goes down, I think Mike White can come in and, manage an offense to an okay ability. I mean, I think they'd probably be maybe below 500, maybe still in those games, but I've maybe a little bit more optimism in Tua staying healthy this year, and I like his wide receiver combo with Waddle and Hill. They brought over Robbie Anderson, Braxton Berrios as well, and then looks like they're going to trot out that three-headed monster in Mostert, Wilson, and um, A-Chain. So I'm like excited to see like how this is all going to play out. But I think they also pair that with a really good defense. I mean, they're being ranked in the top 12 and number 4 overall for defensive line, with Jalen Phillips kind of continuing to kind of grow on his first couple seasons in the NFL, and Christian Wilkins is kind of like one of the best graded defensive interior linemen in the game. I do agree with the Jalen Ramsey points. I think that's going to hurt them, especially based on kind of what they were projecting, with him in their secondary. I think from what I've read, they have one of the better safety combos in the game with Javon Holland. And I can't remember the other safety they have offhand, but in the same sense, I think there's enough team there to, keep them, in the playoff mix. I have them as a playoff team this year. I'm excited about how explosive that offense is going to be, though. And I guess it just comes down to the Jets. I mean, I agree with you on the Pats. I think they're in the basement there. For me, I think the Jets defense is going to be what carries them for most of the year. I think they do have talent, but I'm also kind of like being a bit realistic about who Aaron Rodgers is as a quarterback now. I mean, over the last, past season here with the Packers, I mean, he stumbled basically the entire year until, he finally kind of put it all together in the last home stretch there. But I don't know if he can just necessarily fall back on his heroics, bailing him out if he's trying to kind of cobble it together after starting slow. I think Dalvin Cook is a little bit aged at this point, and I think there are certain cast members like a Randall Cobb. I like Alan Lazard. Randall Cobb seems to be a little bit outdated. So I just think there's a lot of names. There's a ton of personality over there. They're getting tons of press. I don't think that necessarily bodes well for them. I'd much rather be the team flying under the radar to start the year, but they do have a great defense, so it's not going to be they're going to be a competitive team. I can see them pushing to get into the playoffs. I guess I don't have them in my playoffs this year, but I think I'm not as much buying into like a Super Bowl run for the Jets. That's where I'm kind of at.
Yeah. No, hey, that's fair. That's definitely fair. And I mean, I think the thing for me is like, where Tua goes, the Dolphins go, and it is hard, I guess, for me to just be like, yeah, Tua's going to be, healthy. I think he's played 13 games, I think, in a season, right? And and in this competitive division, I feel like it's, each game is going to be very important. So, missing 4 games, say he does play 13, like that could definitely make the difference there. Mike Whiter or whomever, right? So, yeah, I think that's just where I have concerns there. But I do agree. I think from at least a talent standpoint, I feel like the Jets kind of stack up with whomever, but at the same time, like, are they focused at all? Like, there definitely is a lot of drama, I think, that maybe a lot of other teams don't want as much. So I definitely agree with you there. So, but yeah, I guess going to the, back to the Bills and everything, yeah, I mean, this team can definitely, I feel like, make a push there. And it's just like one of those, I feel like that, they've won how many division titles, I think, in consecutive years. I think like the past like 5 years or something like that, or close to it. Maybe Brady got one there with the Patriots, but yeah, it just seems like there's going to be a time where it's like, yeah, maybe not anymore. Or yeah, maybe they do pull off a something like the Chiefs, in their own division, or kind of like the Braves, right? So yeah, I just have a feeling, I think the Jets, all the drama, all the Aaron Rodgers flair. What did Joe Noah say about the Miami Heat? They're Hollywood as hell, but they're good. So that just might be kind of what I feel like the Jets are. So,
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We've got our picks here on the board. I love a little banter, and it'll be fun to watch play out. I mean, I think at the very least, the AFC East got better, and it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch them go at it this year.
yeah, Yeah, for sure. This definitely is one of the toughest divisions, I think, by far. So, and then I guess moving on to the AFC West here, again, starting from the bottom. This was a little bit tough. Again, I think last year, right, we we were all like, this is a loaded division. So for me, you know, it's tough to say, but I'm gonna go with the Raiders here, actually. Jimmy G coming in, no Waller. They did sign Jacoby Myers. So I don't know. I just have a lot of, I guess, question marks with McDaniels and everything, kind of like his whole thing. I just don't like him. Like I don't think he's a good coach or whatever. Uh, so yeah, I have him kind of being last here. It's kind of sad though. They do have some talent on both the offensive side, defensive side. A lot of fantasy value right there. Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, right? It's just yeah. I feel like their whole team makeup or whatever, their identity. I just don't like it. And yeah, now Jimmy G is coming in there. There's just a lot of question marks. I feel like than maybe where they were before, like last year when I think I had a lot more higher prospects for them. So we'll see on that. But yeah, sorry Raider fans out there. I have you finishing last year. And then I got the Denver Broncos kind of bumping up a little bit. Sean Payton coming in. Uh, this definitely could go two ways, right? Where Sean Payton comes in, just revitalizes Russell Wilson's career, kind of like what he did, more so with Drew Brees, right? That could definitely be something. There's a lot of talent, I think, on both sides of the ball. Uh, but with Patrick Surtain, right? Junior, I think he's a tremendous talent there in the secondary. Is it Justin Simmons too? I think I have a bet on that he'll probably lead the league in interceptions or something. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I do feel like the Broncos, last year, they'll try to put that all behind them, and then Sean Payton will get them focused. So I feel like they'll progress a little bit there, but this is a really tough division. I feel like, especially on top there. Next, I got Chargers. I think they'll be a little bit better maybe than what they were last year. Such a talented squad. Such a talented squad. They're just by roster alone, they could stack up with any other roster out there. Um, I think they got a lot of injuries last year on their defensive side. Losing J.C. Jackson. I think they lost Khalil Mack as well. I think Bosa went down maybe a little bit as well. So it's like they just got a lot of injuries on the defensive side. Hopefully they'll be healthier. I think that's kind of what I'm banking on, but I still have been finishing second to the Chiefs. I don't know how you can't go with Mahomes, Kelsey, an improved offensive line, more seasoning with that wide receiver group, which I feel like is underrated with Tony, MVS, Sky Moore, who I know we talked about from a fantasy perspective. I think he'll get a lot more reps, and get some yardage there. And in my opinion, very underrated defense. Chris Jones last year, he was I think third or one of the top. I think he was third in terms of voting for defensive player of the year, and very kind of under the radar defensive talent overall. I feel like, and then they have a pretty young, talented secondary too. So, and Nick Bolton, one of the leading tackles in the game. So, and some talent on the edge as well, with George Karlaftis and Eneduke Uzoma, who I know they got in the draft, and several other players like that, right? So I just feel like, yeah, they gotta. I think to win this division, I can't bet against Mahomes here. So Chiefs, getting another divisional crown.
Yeah, I agree with this full set of rankings here. I don't have a whole ton to bat off you. I mean, I think that Casey, the one thing I do worry about is Chris Jones signing and when that's going to happen. Right now, he's kind of in a holdout, and they talked about, could he be put on the pup list? He said he's willing to hold out until week 8 if he needs to. He says he can afford to hold out for the right contract. So, I mean, if that starts to get really testy, that's going to change how I view that defense. Luckily, they're the cream of the NFL in terms of offense, and they can make things happen. I think they can, put up double-digit wins with their offense alone, even if their defense is missing a key component. But that said, I mean, you look down the rest of this list. I mean, the Chargers, they have an amazing looking roster. You look at the names, you're like, wow, look at all these names: Bosa, Mack, J.C. Jackson, Rashawn Slater, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. But it's like all these guys always are getting injured. They're playing half seasons, if not less, and it's like, yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert is an all-world talent at quarterback, and luckily you got another weapon in Quentin Johnston, which I think was huge for them because I do expect Allen or maybe even Mike Williams to miss some games this year. So to have, Quentin Johnston kind of step up and, see what he's made of, I think that's going to be essential for Herbert to get through the year. Eckler's kind of the do-it-all guy. I mean, continuously being that bell cow and also one of their top receivers. So they're a fun, exciting, electric team. I want to see Herbert take a step. I do think they have one of the worst coaches in the NFL in general. So it's like a lot of those, components all swished together. I just feel like, I still have them inching their way into the playoffs. I was very reluctant. I was looking at a bunch of different teams in the AFC, but I ultimately landed on the Chargers getting that 7th seed. But that's about it. That's the ceiling I basically have for them, unless everyone's healthy and everyone's clicking on all cylinders, which I just don't see it. Denver, yeah, I'd like to think better things are coming, but then they've also dealt with just a really bad string of luck here. I mean, Jerry Jeudy's going to be out for a few weeks. Javonte Williams is coming back from every single part of his knee being blown out. And that's tough. I mean, Wilson needs everybody to be at full strength to kind of get his confidence back up and lead the offense again. I think if there's one thing to really give Denver a pat on the back on is they've got a top 15 defense in the NFL. So they bring over Vance Joseph from Arizona to kind of take the reins and try to get their blitz going and their man coverage kind of set in the back. But I just don't feel like they're coming with the same pieces as they have in those let's call them mid 2010s Broncos type teams. I mean, they have Patrick Surtain, who's like one of the best cornerbacks in the game, but I just don't think their edge rushers are like exciting. And then the Raiders, I don't know, it just seems like a bunch of meh. It's like, you got Garoppolo there. They've signed some free agents. They're bringing back Josh Jacobs. I like Max Crosby as being like their main DN, but maybe Michael Mayer has like a good year in his rookie year as a tight end, and he's competing with Austin Hooper, and I believe they have another OJ Howard, I guess, is over there at tight end too. It's just kind of like, it just seems like a lot of aging type vets that love Devontae Adams as a wide receiver, but it's just like, I don't think they really have an identity, and they definitely have one of the worst defenses in the NFL on paper. So it's going to be rough sledding for them for sure.
Yeah, I want to cheer for the Raiders, but it's hard for me to actually cheer for the Raiders, I feel like. So I do remember our episode where we did talk about Jimmy G and where he landed, and I think we did talk about him trying to land at a place where there's porn stars. So at least good on Jimmy G for picking Las Vegas there. But yeah, we're seeing you. I guess the Raiders going last year. So yeah. I think that covers all the teams or all the divisions in the AFC. For the record, my playoff teams, I do have the Chargers, the Chiefs, Bills, Jets, Jaguars being the only team from that AFC South, and then Ravens and Bengals. So I think it'll be a fun AFC this season, really competitive, and a lot of interesting storylines to go off here. So. But I guess with all that now, Pat, want to hear about the NFC. What do you think?
Yeah, let's stay in the North. Let's go to the NFC North, home of our Chicago Bears. I basically, looking at each one of these 4 teams, the one thing that stood out for all 4 of them is they're not coming with much defense. Not a single one of them is ranked in the top 20 in defense, coming into this year. I think they've got a lot of holes across their rosters to really kind of shore up over the next couple of years to get these teams to real competitive advantages on that side of the ball. But so I guess basically in my criteria, I was just kind of looking at each one of these offenses and thinking, okay, defense defense held equally, what do I think of these offenses? And I'm just going to rank them the way I see them, and that's how I kind of put these standings together. So I'm going to start off with Detroit. I actually think this is the year that they string it together. Their line is one of the best in the game with Penei Sewell and others. They're coming in with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs as this kind of young do-it-all type running back. I mean, we covered him in the fantasy special, and I think that he's going to be really exciting to watch. However the ball's in his hands. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, one of those guys you're kind of moving into, the top tier as far as wide receivers go. And I think pairing him with Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end, will be interesting for them. I think that they do struggle a little bit in that wide receiver depth category, but one thing to say about, their quarterback, Jared Goff, is he looked real solid last year, and his, counting stats for passing yards and I want to say QBR were, top 10 in the league. I mean, he was really, a leader on that team, a young, Lions team, and they took some steps last year. They definitely showed, continuity, toughness. I think they really buy into what Dan Campbell is selling. I think, he brings a lot of fun into the locker room and just that unity, that brotherhood that I think a lot of teams are missing. I mean, I look at a lot of teams and I'm like, the talent is all there, but if you don't have that buy-in, I think that really, sets you back. So I think they move a step further this year and they take that division with a lot of the changes that have gone on within it. So we'll see where they go. But I got Detroit up top. This is going to be a little bit unpopular, but I got the Vikings. Talked about Zadarius Smith. They lost Patrick Peterson. They've lost a handful of other guys. I think Daniel Hunter's like the one thing keeping that defense together. Again, a lot of these defenses, they're in the same ballparks with one another. And I just feel like Kirk Cousins and JJ, and then you have Jordan Addison. You got KJ Osborne there. Madison's been there before. And Hawkinson's actually a pretty exciting tight end after he got moved from Detroit. I think that, the offense is going to be the thing that keeps them, humming. I think they can, go toe-to-toe and, kind of put points up on the board. I think they're going to be an absolute doormat on the other end. But I think kind of looking at some of the other offenses in this division, I would place them second at this point. So I'll leave it at that. Minnesota takes a step back from last year, but still ends up in second place. I then have our Chicago Bears slotted in at third. I think there is a ton of excitement, kind of coming into Chicago this season. I, obviously love the trade they made to move down to number 9. They got Darnell Wright to help protect Justin Fields. There's another play I really would have enjoyed having instead of him, but we won't go back into that topic. But, you got DJ Moore on the outside. I think just pairing him with a bunch of other capable receivers this year, Darnell Mooney, Claypool, they signed Robert Tonyan. They've got Cole Kmet. Hopefully, if that offensive line kind of stays healthy, sticks together, it can be a capable unit. I've heard some injuries with Tevin Jenkins, which worry me kind of going into the year. But I think Justin Fields is going to take another step. I think he's going to be explosive on his feet. I think he gets a little bit better in the pass game. But I am a little bit concerned with the defense. I like the linebacking crew that they've assembled for this season. I like Jalen Johnson and Jaquan Brisker in the secondary. I'm trying to think, Yannick Ngakoue recently signed with us as an end. That should be, interesting. I know we also brought over DeMarcus Walker. I just feel like there's still, some holes there on the front four. I don't know if it's like, if we've got anything elite there. I don't know if we have anything like promising in terms of young talent that we can get truly excited about. It feels like a lot of, adequate starters and then, kind of some below average players as well there. So I feel like, any teams trying to establish the run will have an advantage against the Bears. And I'm a little bit skeptical about, what their defensive units can put together. Although it seems that Eberflus is like kind of has been targeting, a linebacker strong team with, a very good secondary. And, we'll kind of have to wait and see how he, schemes against, these teams in specific. But I think they take a step this year. I'm still kind of in the 6-7 win category. I think that's definitely low based on expectations and what I've been hearing from folks in Chicago, but I'm still a little bit skeptical. And then finally, the Green Bay Packers in the basement. You know, again, if defense is held equally amongst these teams, Green Bay kind of looking at bringing in a new quarterback, Jordan Love. He is a third-year pro, but in the same sense has not had a lot of battles to this point. If Justin Fields was at the bottom, of the NFL with all of his talent, and I do think Justin Fields is a more talented quarterback than Jordan Love. I think Love struggles. I think he's got a decent enough offensive line. He's got some good running backs. Christian Watson's exciting. He's interesting, but he's not necessarily baked and complete at this point. I don't know if he's like a true number one, or is he a wide receiver 3 with some incredible upside? We're still kind of having to determine that this year, and there's not much else around him. So, if he doesn't have a good defense, he doesn't have a ton of weapons to really, get comfortable with. He himself is a little bit inexperienced. I think they struggle. I think they do struggle, and they, weren't a very good team last year. I mean, Aaron Rodgers really, I think willed them to, a near 500 record, but in the same sense, it was a pretty ugly year coming out of Green Bay. So I kind of expect that going into this one, and that's kind of how I looked at it in the NFC North.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. Except I'm the forever optimist here for the Chicago Bears, I feel like. So I have them finishing second here. I think Vegas has them at 7.5. So, maybe they do get that 8 wins, 9 wins, I feel like is kind of what I'm anticipating here. So, yeah, I think I have like maybe 9. Maybe they do sneak in the playoffs. Maybe they don't. I definitely see them as that fringe team. So, but I 100% agree. Lions, I think, they have the least amount of question marks. This division can be interesting, right? It can definitely flip. Maybe Jordan Love does continue this whole Packers fiasco of them just having quarterbacks become Hall of Famers. We just haven't seen anything to say that, though, and like you were saying, Christian Watson, explosive wideout, had a tremendous second half of the season, but he had a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing to him again in the second half of the season, where I think the Packers won like 5 games straight or something like that, right? So, yeah, great defense, probably the best defense in this entire division, I feel like. But at the same time, their offense is going to be a little anemic. I feel like everybody's just going to, just keep the safeties in the box, I feel like, and just make sure that Watson is covered. I think that's basically it, right? So, yeah, I have the same kind of setup there, but I honestly would not be surprised if the Packers were to pull something off there. I'm not necessarily. I don't know if Matt LaFleur is actually a good coach, or if Aaron Rodgers is actually just was tremendous and everything under him. So that's where I kind of have the question marks there of maybe the Packers do pull off something in this division. But yeah, I definitely agree. Lions number 1, maybe Bears, Vikings, switch it. Alternate there, but yeah, for me it's hard to pick the Packers. I feel like just with that offense and questions on there with Jordan Love, but come on, man, the Bears, DJ Moore, and I think that's the whole thing, like with Matt Eberflus, right? He is like that defensive coach, and that's where it's like I hope he's communicating with Ryan Poles of like, yeah, we don't necessarily need to be like trading for Chris Jones, or we can use these hodgepodge of mid-level talent, I guess, on the defensive side, and we'll get enough sacks and pressure in there. But as long as you have an awesome secondary, awesome linebacker crew, we'll be fine. So maybe that is a conversation that they're having right now. Glad that they got Ngakwe, somebody that's just like, hey, all I do is get sacks. That's it. I'm like, great, we need that, because I feel like on the edge we just have a lot of question marks there. So yeah, we'll see. I do feel pretty good on at least the run part a little bit. I know you were a little bit pessimistic there, but I feel like the linebacker crew that we have did sign Billings, I believe, and then we also have Jervon Dexter and then Zach Pickens. I think both those 2 defensive tackles fared pretty well on the run, I think, from what I heard or saw statistically. So, yeah, I feel a bit more optimistic. I'm going over on the 7.5. but yeah, it's. Am I gonna place a bet on it? Maybe not, but yeah, I would if I were a bet, I'd probably go over. So yeah.
It sounds good. Moving on to the South, I think this division again, next to the AFC South is going to be one of the worst in the NFL. I have the New Orleans Saints at the top of the division. I think it's largely in part to their defense. I mean, now a lot of their key components on defense are starting to age. Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, Marcus May. I mean, they're kind of getting up there in age, but in the same sense, like their unit as a total, unit, I think in general still ranks pretty high. I think that they can hold it together, fortify, themselves against some of their opponents here in this division aren't going to be coming with, the most dynamic of offenses in the NFL. I think on the offensive side of the ball, it's interesting that they brought over Derek Carr. I think he's a really competent passer. Whether or not that's always translated into wins hasn't really always been the case, but I do think they have enough of a roster there to make things interesting. He'll have obviously Chris Olave. To start the year, he'll have Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller. They'll bring back Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill is kind of a do-it-all, tight end, quarterback, running back type. So it seems like they've got some interesting pieces there that they can, kind of work with, get him settled in. And, of the other teams, I think that they'll be, the best of them. Now, is that translating into 9 wins, 10 wins? Like, it's probably on the low side of being 500, but I think they get there. After that, I have maybe a little bit of a shock. I'm not sure, but the Carolina Panthers at number 2. They're coming with a defensive unit that's, some are ranking in the top 5 as over, in terms of overall. Some are a little bit more modest in saying they'll be top 15, but any way you slice it, I mean, people are pretty high on them having, Brian Burns at, end, and you got JC Horn at cornerback. I mean, they're pretty bullish on their front four and kind of their ability to cover in the secondary too. So, then it kind of translates over to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Bryce Young, he'll be in his first year. I'm sure he's going to have his struggles. I'm sure he's going to, take his lumps, but hopefully guys like Thielen, Chark, I mean, bringing over Miles Sanders to be, hopefully a do-it-all back for him. Hayden Hurst is a professional at tight end. I mean, they've got some notable veterans there, some notable guys that he can go to. Their offensive line grades out pretty well. They definitely drafted in the first round there, I think in the past 2 seasons. So they have some guys on the line that are interesting to, offer Bryce with that protection. But again, I think I'm kind of putting them in second in one of the worst divisions in the NFL. So like the Tennessee Titans, I don't think, getting past a 6-7 win mark is really where they're going to be. So they're probably going to be around there if I had to take a wild guess. At number 3, and this was close with Carolina, I have the Atlanta Falcons. I think that on the positive side, it seems like they're returning a lot of, their offensive, mix from last year. They bring back Drake London. They bring back Kyle Pitts. They had Desmond Ridder get some good action last year. Arthur Smith is starting to establish a run-first identity over there. Tyler Algier was doing the majority of that work last year. Obviously, you splash in the first-round pick in Bijan Robinson this year. That might take that offense to a completely different level. I think my bigger concerns come on the defensive side of the ball. They're ranking in the bottom 5 for total defense, kind of projections going into this year. So that's a bit worrisome, at least for Atlanta. I mean, I think that, offensively, they could be a pretty exciting team. I think they also added Jonnu Smith and Mac Hollins from the Raiders. So, they've got some extra pieces to go along. Maybe it's Desmond Ridder who's, taking that extra step, even though I can kind of see it again, topping out at a 6-7 win, type of season for them. But they do have Taylor Heineke, backing up Ridder, who they brought over from the Commanders. And, Taylor Heineke on talent alone, borderline starter in the NFL, but I do think he's super gritty. He's a really good leader. He's got a lot of heart. So, he was able to take, I think, for his run with the Commanders, I think he might have been above 500. So I think there's enough there to kind of see some of the building blocks that the Falcons are kind of starting to move forward with. But in the same sense, I think that just defensively, they're just going to be such a liability that I just don't think they'll be able to stop many teams on the other end. So that's where I kind of have my doubts. And then finally the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a Brady-less bunch. It's coming in with Baker Mayfield, possibly Kyle Trask, behind center. I mean, that's just right there and right then. I feel like that's where I kind of stopped having, a sort of optimism, enthusiasm around this bunch. I think their position players are, at the best all pros, and at the very worst, they're very good professionals at this point. I mean, Mike Evans is getting up there a little bit in age. Chris Godwin's, dealt with a handful of injuries. They do have Rashad White, who's interesting. I think they have some really good position players, but if you don't have a guy, consistently getting the ball to you and kind of, limiting the turnovers, I think that's going to be, just a really long season in Tampa. Lucky for them, Bowles has put together some really solid defenses over there. I think they're grading out in the top 10 in defense. On their end, I think their defensive line is probably the weaker, point of their team, but in the same sense, I think if anything, the defense is going to keep them close enough in some of these, games against, intra-division opponents. But in the same sense, when they get outside that division, I think they're just going to be toast. And yeah, man, I'm thinking like a top 5 draft pick this year is in the cards for the Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, yeah, why wouldn't you? This is a great draft, I think, for quarterbacks, right? That a lot of teams are like tanking. The Cardinals, they're definitely tanking for Caleb Williams there. So, yeah, no, I actually agree 100% with all your picks here. So, and it's interesting because this division, right? I think remember last year, I think the team that won, I forgot, was it the Bucks that won? Did they win? I think they had 8 wins or something like that. There was such a small variance between all the top team and the bottom team. I think it was like 7-10 and 8-9 or something like that, right? So I agree though 100% on everything on your rankings here. Saints, honestly, just the least amount of question marks. Best quarterback I think in the division, having some weapons there. The key thing obviously is health. They are getting older, so that's just something I think to worry about there. But they just have enough talent, I feel like, to get them over the hump. Weakest schedule, I think, in terms of rankings in the entire NFL. So obviously playing in a weak division, that definitely helps. Panthers, I think I looked this up. They have on Madden, actually, they have like 13 80s and above. So they're actually pretty deep. Maybe not the most high level talent, right? But yeah, I think they have the same amount of 80s as I don't know, like the Bills, like some of those good teams, right? Obviously the Bills having Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, etc. But still, this team actually has some pretty good depth overall. But yeah, rookie quarterback Bryce Young. Falcons, I want to like them, but like you said, the defense, so many question marks. Offense looks pretty. That's gonna be interesting, right? With Bijan and Pitts, Drake London as well. Ritter, we'll see what he's got. And I agree with you on the Bucks. I don't trust Baker Mayfield. Like I looked at all the stats, right, with Evans, Godwin, and then I don't know, is Rashad White, is he gonna do anything? Like I don't know, he doesn't look too explosive. So I have them last. Defense will keep them in the games, like you said. But yeah, man, I agree with you on these rankings here.
Fair enough. Moving on to the NFC West. You know, I think again the bottom 2 teams in this division are vying for top 5, draft lottery slots. I mean, this is looking at the Rams and Cardinals at the bottom there. Stafford, we're just not really sure, can he stay healthy for an entire season? He's dealt with a lot of back issues, other injuries throughout his career. He also just doesn't have a lot of support around him. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, like that's nice. Cam Akers could be interesting. Beyond that, you've got Ben Skowronek, Van Jefferson, Kyron Williams. It's like there's just not a lot to get excited about on the offensive side for them. On defense, they've lost a ton of their best players. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd, are now gone. Aaron Donald is the only thing kind of being the linchpin to, keeping them probably on the field itself. So I think that, from a lot of rankings I've seen, they're a bottom three defense projected for this year. I mean, that's terrible. And, with an aging offense as well, it's like, I just don't think it's going to be a lot of fun out in LA for any of the Rams fans. Cardinals, as we mentioned, I mean, they recently released Colt McCoy, somebody who could at least be competent in, passing the ball to Marquise Brown and getting the ball to, James Conner or, um, you know, really whoever else. I mean, they bring in Josh Dobbs and they have, rookie Clayton Tune kind of, vying for, the starting job at this point. And, I think guys like Rondell Moore are going to be wondering, how their stats going to look at the end of the year if their quarterback's, always on his back. So it's going to be pretty ugly, I think, in Arizona. I mean, very, very ugly, not only on the offensive side of the ball where they're, being projected to be in the bottom four of the league, but they're also, being projected as the worst defense and having the worst defensive line in the NFL. So, needless to say, none of those teams are even going to sniff, contention or, 500 level, play. I mean, it's going to be bad. So it leaves me with San Francisco and Seattle, and I have them ranked in that order. I think San Francisco is incredibly deep on its defensive line. They bring over Javon Hargrave. They steal him from the rival Eagles this year. I mean, returning guys like Fred Warner. This is going to be a kind of a revenge type of year for them. I think they're going to come out extremely hungry. Brock Purdy gets another year in. Hopefully, his UCL injury is starting to repair itself. But even on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you got to knock on wood that CMC stays healthy this year. They still, they bring back Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle. They've got Elijah Mitchell at backup at running back. I mean, I just feel like this team, hopefully can just stay healthy all the way through, or can all get healthy around playoff time. Because if they are, they're going to be one of the most dangerous, teams in the league. They recently traded even Trey Lance to, kind of shore up Sam Darnold as their backup. So I think that, Shanahan really sees something in Sam Darnold. I mean, something that I think a lot of folks have wanted to see, but I think maybe he can get the most out of him as a backup if Purdy happened to go down. So let's just say it doesn't happen. I see San Fran being kind of the cream there. And then Seattle. I think Seattle's a competitive team. Obviously Geno showed out last year. They bring over JSN to pair with their, Lockett Metcalf pairing. They have obviously Ken Walker in the backfield. They get Zach Charbonnet to kind of, back him up and kind of add more firepower out of the backfield. I think if they get a knock, the defense, at least from some of the grading I'm looking at, is kind of putting them top 20 at best. I think they have some young pieces that are super exciting, especially in the secondary. I think they've continued to load up there with Witherspoon, Woolen, and others, but we'll just have to see. I think that they're a playoff team. I think I've got them, taking one of those wild card spots. So we'll get to that in a minute here. But that's my NFC West at the outset.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, it's pretty clear what the Cardinals are doing, so don't need to knock, or talk about them too much. Rams, yeah, it seems like they are trying to figure out, okay, maybe we'll try to give it a little bit of a run. If we don't see any momentum whatsoever, yeah, we'll just, kind of see if we can get a top draft pick there as well. See if we can find Matthew Stafford's replacement. We won the Super Bowl, great, but they got rid of Ramsey and Floyd, so I feel like they're kind of headed that way. And yeah, it really is gonna be Seahawks, 49ers. I've seen some people pick the Seahawks, which honestly, like, they could possibly dethrone the 49ers. I wouldn't be completely surprised. But, again, if I were to bet, I'm gonna pick the 49ers like 9 out of 10 times because they have the most talented roster out there. Yeah, even with Brock Purdy or even some sort of medium type of quarterback, they still have the best roster. So I feel pretty good about them winning this division. Like you said, getting Hargraves right, or Javon Hargrave. I feel like that was an awesome move from them, stealing them from your competition. So yeah, 100%. This NFC West, I feel like a lot of people are probably predicting 49ers, Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals here, and yeah, it just makes total sense for me. So
Sounds good. Moving on to the NFC East, I don't have any changes to the ordering of the teams based on last year. So I'm going right down the board, similar as last year. I've got Philly, Dallas, the New York Giants, and the Washington Commanders. I have seen all the buzz around Dallas. I've seen, their offensive rankings, their defensive rankings. I mean, they could very well be one of the best defensive units in the NFL. Like, I will not dispute that. They've got obviously Parsons, they've got Trevon Diggs, they brought over Stephon Gilmore from Indianapolis. They still have, obviously Lawrence on the end as well. It's just like they do have a lot of pieces that, probably bring them up in the ratings. I know they had the top, amount of pressure placed on quarterbacks as of last year as a unit. I mean, I feel like that's exciting. Still got, Dan Snyder kind of at the helm and, returning a lot of their starters from last year. So they do have a lot of the chemistry continuity baked in. I think the reason why I have them second, even though I think a lot of people want to like kind of push them to the mountaintop, is you got that X factor in Dak Prescott. I mean, number one, I don't trust it'll stay healthy. I think that's first and foremost. Number two, I just don't think he has the moxie. I don't think he has, the intestinal fortitude. I just really, there's something about him that I feel like when the big moments come, he kind of fumbles and stumbles. And for everything that I saw from Philly, last year, just Jalen Hurts, his leadership, his aggressiveness, his ability to kind of, you know, take charge and kind of run that whole offense both on the ground and through the air. I mean, he's exciting. I mean, I think, they return a lot of their starters on offense. They've got a completely different mix in the backfield, which I think is also something to keep an eye on with DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, who I think might be, the workhorse back when he's not, dealing with injuries himself. Could be a little bit of a mixed bag there in the running game, but I think Hurts does enough on the ground himself to make that competent overall. And I think if there's one knock, I mean, we look at the front seven and we kind of, drool because they've got all these all-pro, starters, and then they mixed it with a lot of, Georgia talent as well. So it's kind of like they continue to, fill slots where they need to, like Javon Hargrave leaves and they bring over, Jalen Carter to kind of fill that spot, or Jordan Davis, a drafted rookie from the year prior. So it's all interesting. I think the knock that I get to is the secondary. Slay and Bradbury are in their 30s now. They lost CJGJ to the Detroit Lions, who, might be one of their rivals this year in the NFC. So I think that's where the analysts start to like pin the Cowboys up with the Eagles. But at the end of the day, I mean, this Eagles team is pretty tenacious. If anything, they struggle a little bit with elite quarterbacks like a Patrick Mahomes. But, if they can just do what they normally do, I think, outside of that elite quarterback coming to town or whatever it could be, I mean, it's still fine them being like an 11, possibly 12 win team,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Eagles, I think for me, yeah, I got the Eagles on top, Cowboys, and then I got the Commanders, actually. And then Giants. The funny thing with the Giants, and I might get flack from the Giants fans on this. They have a better team than they did last year. They just have a really hard schedule, I feel like, compared to some of their comrades in their division. So yeah, I have the Giants finishing last here, but they might have the same record though. I think is the funny part as last season is just that they have a better roster, like with Waller now and such. But anyway, yeah, that's I think where I landed there. But yeah, for me, it's got to be the Eagles for sure. Like you said, the defensive line, the talent that they have there, even though they have a little bit of, I guess, an aging secondary, they have enough talent, I feel like, to kind of just overcome some of that. Prescott still is talented. It'll be interesting what happens with the Cowboys with, I think, Michael Parsons moving strictly to the defensive end now. I think he stated that, and that's also where all the money's at in that Dan Quinn defense. And then, Tony Pollard, like, I can go on with regards to all the Cowboy talent that they have there. We'll see what happens, I guess, without Kellen Moore and kind of that whole thing that they were doing over there, I feel like. But yeah, I just have, I guess, Eagles overcoming any of those obstacles there, continuing on. Although they lost both of their offensive and defensive coordinators actually there. So, and then at Commanders, I don't know if I'm like jumping on the Sam Howell train or whatever, but I feel like he'll do enough for that team, and I think that team it's really talented. It really is. One of the best I think front sevens in all of football, underrated. And then they have enough offensive talent, I feel like, to make some differences there. So, yeah, I feel like Commanders going to take a little bit of a step, I feel like, but at the same time, Giants fans, it's hard for me not to go against Brian Dable. He's such a talented, good coach. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I neglected to cover the bottom two teams in this division. No slight against either of them because I think this is one of the better divisions in the NFC. I think with the Giants, I think I'm starting with the coach. I mean, Dable's ability to kind of see the pros in Daniel Jones and kind of try to maximize where he has those strengths. I mean, I think returning Barkley and adding some new weapons to the wide receiving core with Waller and Hyatt. I think that could be fun. The defensive side of the ball, this is one of the units that's kind of graded in the lower third of the league. So I think overall it's going to take great coaching and scheming to kind of get them over the top. But I do think they have some interesting pieces on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is one of the best defensive interior linemen in the game, and they still got Kayvon Thibodeau, and I think they have Leonard Williams is also one of their interior linemen too. So it's I think on their front four, at least, they're pretty formidable. Everything else, I think, has some question marks. Washington, the reason why I have him in last is because I'm not really sure what to expect from Sam Howell. Again, he could have ability. He could be somebody who, turns into being a competent quarterback. I feel like he has the ability to use his legs as well as his arms. So I just think you're going into year one basically, and I think that's a lot to ask of him, especially in what I think is one of the hardest divisions in the game, especially when you're facing Philly and Dallas a couple times. That might be a lot to take on. And I know they've got Jacoby Brissett as well, but it's just hard to say that the defense alone is going to be enough to get them winning ball games. And Terry McLaurin starting off with turf toe. I don't know how long it lasts, but if he's not at full strength too, I mean that's a huge knock to the offense. So guys like Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel really have to step up to kind of cover some of those losses. But all this being said, I think that I've got three of these teams going to the playoffs. My top three are similar to last year. It was hard for me to get creative in the NFC just based on really how bad it is compared to the AFC. Like if you really look at it, it was tough for me to think about who's going to make the playoffs once we got into wild card slots over there. But man, it's not looking too pretty.
Yeah, no, this definitely is a tough. The NFC definitely was tough, and yeah, for me, I was like, well, I got to have the Bears in here somehow, so somebody's gonna have to get screwed. I feel like so. Yeah, I had Seahawks, Niners, and then yeah, out of the NFC East, I did want to put the three teams in there, but yeah, I think I had to put the Bears in there, so I had Cowboys and just the Eagles, and then Saints, and then Lions and Bears there at the NFC North. So, but yeah, this NFC definitely is tough. I think a lot of people are predicting it's gonna be like a Niners Eagles like trajectory that way, but I don't know. It'll be competitive, I think, but yeah, those two teams I feel like are just on a different stratosphere, right now. So
Yeah, so I guess with that, maybe we start to segue into our playoff predictions. I mean, I feel like we've each kind of set up our divisions. We've batted ideas back and forth here. However you want to do it. I mean, we can cover both conferences and just kind of spitball it if you want to walk through the AFC to start.
I mean, yeah. I'll definitely go through the AFC, kind of share like my thought process on the whole thing. Um, who's gonna have the best record? I think like who's gonna have home field advantage. I think is gonna be really important here, and that for me, in this really competitive conference, I'm still gonna have to pick the Chiefs. Like, I try to rationalize all the other teams. I really did. I tried to rationalize the Ravens. It's like maybe they do stay healthy, right? But they got a young defense. Maybe it's not. It's just not their time. I think the one team that I thought maybe they can do it is obviously the Bengals, right? They have beaten the Chiefs before. They have gone to the Super Bowl before. I think this is a more talented team than they've had in the previous years, honestly. Their defense and younger secondary, they have a couple more seasons under their belt. So that was definitely the one team I think would challenge them. And I'm probably anticipating some sort of, again, some sort of Chiefs versus like Bengals type of matchup there. Again, with respect to the Bills. So that definitely is where I feel like, it's probably maybe the matchup there. And honestly, I went back and forth as we were talking on this podcast, like Chiefs, Bengals. I had to go with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs here. So my AFC champs, going back to Arrowhead there.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I mean, I think that's a good debate to have internally, and those guys have definitely had their battles so far here early on in their careers. But I guess the way that my AFC gets set up, I have Buffalo getting a first round bye again. I think they're strong enough on both sides of the ball to take care of business during the regular season, get themselves a pretty spot there, and kind of move on. I have some knockoffs happening in the first round. I have Miami kind of traveling on the road to Jacksonville to face the 3 seed Jags, and I have Miami going over. I think Jalen Ramsey coming back at the end of the year is going to add a boost. I think the running back trio will probably get healthy. Could we see a Jonathan Taylor trade at some point? I mean, Dolphins have been rumored to be the only team really firing over credible offers there. So if Jonathan Taylor comes over at some point, at the trade deadline or mid season, that could be a completely different team and something to look out for. I have KC knocking off the Chargers pretty handily at home, and I have Cincinnati, Baltimore having a good battle, but I have Cincy going over. So it basically sets up Miami going to Buffalo, Cincy going to KC. I love the Bengals this year. I mean, with Burrow and their trio of wide receivers just again coming right back. Mixon hopefully staying healthy. Defense that's competent, but definitely starting to kind of fade into that bottom half of the league. The same goes for KC. I mean, elite offense, but defense that may be starting to fade just a touch, especially. We don't know where Chris Jones is going to be at that point in time. I would think he's on the team, so just having that all kind of equal. I have Cincy knocking him off yet again. In KC, kind of avenging their loss from last season. So we'll see where Cincy goes there. And I have Buffalo taking care of business against Miami in a very cold setting out in Buffalo. It feels like a very comfy spot for them to be in. But Cincy went there last year and took care of business. Made honestly Josh Allen look pretty stupid. I just see this Cincy team as being unbelievably motivated after two really deflating ends to their years in the first, the prior 2 seasons where, the talent is there, the motivation is there. I think they like playing with each other. I mean, the secondary's gone through a little bit of turnover, but they do have some exciting young guys kind of backfilling some of those slots. So if their secondary can just be okay, I think they have enough in the front seven there to kind of keep them competitive for their offense to kind of do its thing. So, I've got Cincy over Buffalo and Cincy representing the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, hey, the common theme I think is Cincy here, right? Like, again, I went back and forth on this. Do the Chiefs make it past? Like, I don't know, man. So, I do like the Bengals, I think. At least to have a good season, a great season, right? Going to AFC Championship. So, I think that's a good pick there. So, but yeah, let's hear about the what's happening over there in the NFC for you.
Yeah, so I mean, based on how the divisions are structured, I had San Francisco being my 1 seed, getting that easy bye. I think they just clean up in their division and kind of get in there pretty easily. From there on out, I mean, we've got some rematches. I feel like at least one from last year in the Jets and the Eagles. I think the Eagles take care of business at home. Dallas, I think, gets a win on the road at New Orleans. I obviously don't have a ton of faith or stock placed in the Saints other than winning their division, but I think Dallas is obviously strong enough to maybe get past them in the first round. And then I've got Detroit, doing okay against Seattle. I think that'll be a really fun matchup to watch if it comes to be with Geno Smith and his offense against Jared Goff and some of his new offensive weapons. I mean, I think Detroit being at home, maybe having a bit of that momentum on their side this year, some of that grit that they brought over in their new secondary with guys like Mosley, Sutton. They've got CJ GJ, Brian Branch. I mean, I think that'll be a lot of fun to watch. And I just think Detroit gets one solid win here for the year, similar to like a Jacksonville Jaguars type season last year. But yeah, essentially, it sets up Detroit going to Philly. I think Philly takes care of them, and then Dallas and San Fran would be just a very interesting conference semi. But I just think San Francisco's got too much, on the defensive side for Dak to handle, and they've got enough on offense. Even if I, don't necessarily think Purdy will be a Pro Bowler, I still think they have enough there. Even if Sam Darnold happens to be the quarterback, I think that could be, just enough offense to take care of business. So it sets up a 49ers-Eagles rematch, and this time it'll be in San Fran. And I think they avenged their loss from last year. I love the Eagles, I really do. But I think the Niners, taking Hargrave from the competition and then, kind of returning that front seven and having the experience and a lot of very interesting offensive weapons. I think they get it done this year and go to the Super Bowl for the NFC.
Yeah. I've the 49ers here too. So yeah, almost the same Super Bowl, I feel like. So yeah, 49ers here. It's just hard, I think, for like teams that lose the Super Bowl to return to the Super Bowl, right? And then let alone win it. I know is another thing. I think there's been two teams in the entire NFL history that have lost the Super Bowl and then won the Super Bowl. There were definitely those Bills teams, right, in the 90s that lost the Super Bowls in consecutive seasons and such. But this 49ers team, I think maybe for the next couple of years will probably go back and forth with the 49ers and Eagles is honestly probably what I would anticipate. And yeah, if the Eagles advance, great, good for them. But yeah, another season with Brock Purdy, kind of under the like a full season now where he's kind of been the man essentially, and with a full season too with McCaffrey, right, and Elijah Mitchell in the backfield. I feel like again, this is like the most loaded roster I feel like in the entire NFL. So that defense just got better. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Niners kind of pull away from there. Yeah, get a home field advantage, and then kind of just run through the playoffs there, and pull through, I think, against the Eagles in the conference championship.
Gotcha. So I guess that sets up our Super Bowls, respectively. You've got KC against San Fran. I've got Cincy against San Fran. How do you see your game going?
I gotta go with the Chiefs. It's one of those like redundant things. I definitely felt like how many back-to-back champions has there been, but at the same time, like how many Patrick Mahomes have there been? They're returning essentially the same roster that they had last season. We'll see what happens with Chris Jones, but I definitely feel like he's gonna eventually want to chase for the championship and everything. So I don't think that they'll trade him. I think that would be a stupid move for the Chiefs, and I just don't anticipate that happening. But crazier things have happened in the NFL, I feel like. But yeah, Chiefs, Chris Jones will come back. They'll have that pass rush. They'll make enough plays. I do not believe in Brock Purdy to make enough plays. The Chiefs defense, it always feels like with that Steve Spagnuolo defense, right, is that they always seem to make enough plays when the matter counts in those big games, right? So, we talk about what he did against the Patriots and Tom Brady and stuff with those Giants defenses. That's definitely where I feel like, the Chiefs kind of had that, I don't want to say advantage, but like that definitely is a difference maker, I feel like. So, yeah, I'm going to pick the Chiefs here. Sorry, Brock Purdy. I just don't think you got it. And sorry, Christian McCaffrey and the rest of the team. Again, the most talented team, but Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, that magic. I'm going to go with him this season.
Yeah, I mean we're basically talking about the same narrative, just two different teams, and I feel like two very similar type constructed teams. I mean, I feel like they're going very pass heavy, offense heavy, defenses that maybe fall somewhere in the middle of the league. Going up against an elite defense with a pretty darn good offense is just it kind of just comes down to quarterback play, and I think a lot of what you're saying, you know, registers with me. Like I think that Brock Purdy, showed us that he's capable of obviously going undefeated in the regular season and being competent and up until his arm kind of you know started to detach itself there. But it I think this is kind of a building block year for him. Going through the playoffs, showing that he can win games. Building that confidence. I think that you know he can be a competent starter in the NFL. He could be maybe good to very good. I don't know what his upside or what his ceiling truly is just yet, but I know what Burrows is, and he's his head's hitting the ceiling. So it's like I just feel like there's been too many of these tough luck losses that he's taken already. He's been in the show. He's been in that big game. He knows what it's like to lose in that big game. He kind of almost tasted it last year with the roughing the kicker penalty at the very end. Just kind of took them out of that game. It's like he's just so close, and I've got a lot of stock in him. Just in general, I just really like his attitude and kind of his ability to just sling it all over the field. In these type of games, I would normally side with the team with the superior defense, but I just feel like there's just too much. I think team camaraderie at this point. I think they all kind of know that their window might be closing pretty soon after this year. I mean, some point, you know, guys are going to want extensions or need to be signed and stuff, and it'll just take them some iterations to get themselves maybe to a new window of contention or just a different evolution of that team. So I think this core knows that, and they're going to bank on it this season.
Yeah, no, and I probably carry the same sentiments. I think with the two teams you had there, like if if the Bengals get in there, like they're gonna win it. I feel like they've gone through so many things with regards to losing a Super Bowl, and then also their competition against the Chiefs, right? It just seems like they're almost due for a championship. And then yeah, this is I feel like I want to say that like they're last chance. I definitely feel like as long as they have Burrow, as long as they have Chase, and a decent line, and then their defense, some of the staples that they got there, they're gonna make runs. But this is as good of a receiver core as I think Joe Burrow is ever gonna have in his career. And then with Mixon still healthy, and the offensive line with Orlando Brown now, this is as good of a time as ever. So that's something where I felt like, man, this Bengals team, there's something to watch. I feel like so. Yeah, I think that picks makes sense there. I just don't know if Brock Purdy is going to win a Super Bowl. Like it just doesn't compute for me. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with Tom Brady kind of being like uninspiring, maybe going into the Super Bowl in his first one there against the Rams. I mean, I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks. I mean, it was kind of Matt Stafford was kind of a surprise. Not that we didn't know who he was or what his abilities truly were, but there are some of those years where it's like there's just enough roster around the quarterback where they manage the game. They just kind of make it happen, and they can compete in there. I mean, Jake Delhomme, Trent Dilfer. I mean, there's been some interesting, Rex Grossman. There's been some interesting cats under center, come Super Bowl time. So I think Purdy's like really starting to build a name for himself already, but it's still too early to understand like really what is his ceiling.
Yeah, and he, to the credit, like he did make some plays against the Eagles, right? Until yeah, he basically lost his arm, and yeah, they couldn't throw with, they didn't have anybody to actually throw the ball. So, uh, yeah, it definitely, I feel like with Purdy, it's just a lot of unknown. But to your point, anything can happen in football, right? So,
So we'll see. So I guess with that, Did you have any other thoughts about the playoffs or the regular season or anything that we didn't really cover up to this point?
I mean, it'd be crazy, like, if any of the teams we basically just didn't mention, right, were not to go to either the Super Bowl or conference championships. But yeah, I guess my question, like, do you have, you think you touched on a few, but yeah, is there like a surprise team that you think you want to highlight, or a team that you think could, maybe make a run either from the AFC or NFC?
I mean, my complete dark horse this year is the Miami Dolphins. I feel like I'm very bullish on them. I think, it may take a little bit of time to see what their complete roster looks like. I think that Tua staying healthy is a complete X factor. I just felt like at the start of last year, we watched them kind of come out of the gates, beat Buffalo at home. I believe they then again beat them on the road or started taking down some other bigger opponents. I was like, man, this team is coming out hot. And then all the Tua concussions started to hit, and it just kind of derailed that entire team and kind of the mojo of that team. But still, I felt like they fought till the very end. They got into the playoffs. Tyreek Hill, proved that he doesn't need Patrick Mahomes to be a complete game changer. Uh, I just think coming into this year, the defense is a little bit stronger. They need to get Ramsey back. So, if all these things start to happen toward the end of the year where it's like they're starting to add those pieces, maybe they make a big trade or two. We don't really know, but I'm actually, looking at Mike McDaniels and how he kind of goes about his business. He seems like he's got a lot of swagger and like I don't think he's afraid of the moment. I don't think he's afraid to make some pretty crazy calls and so it'll just be a fun year for them. I think they've got enough talent to get it done. It'll just take all that. It'll just take them, kind of, maybe just finding their way in the playoffs any way they really can, and then from there, just start going upset by upset. But yeah, if I had a look at them for a while, going into Buffalo, and there's something about Buffalo where it's like I think they're a very strong team, but I think there is a little bit of a deer in the headlights in them, just kind of, Josh Allen not taking that aggressive next step. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks like that. So, yeah, keep your eye on Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have them making the playoffs necessarily, but I definitely feel like out of all the teams, like they can just run and like get it, So and Mike McDaniels is hilarious too. So I feel like he would make like a great like playoff, little snippets here and there and little quirks. Like I just love his attitude on that. So really much like a geek or nerd as an NFL head coach. So that definitely is a fun team to watch, regardless of if they make it the playoffs or not. So
How
yeah.
about you? Did you have any dark horses or teams to kind of keep an eye on throughout the year?
Well, I mean, I guess the Bears basically, like, for me, Matt Eberflus, that defense, yeah, they don't have the best defensive front. And I think that's, one thing we've all kind of acknowledged, but, a talented young secondary, uh, uh, they signed two, like potential all pro, linebackers there. And then, their defense, their defensive line, they definitely have some, I feel like, weaknesses there, but some, decent, I guess, run stoppers, and then potentially some pass rushing. But yeah, it's a wait and we'll see. So I think they can do enough though on the defensive side with Matt Eberflus as a coach. But yeah, I think Justin Fields, he's going to be an X factor. Love what I saw with him and DJ Moore. So for me, I feel pretty optimistic, I think, about the Bears. But yeah, the injuries, I think, to the offensive line, that that certainly has me for concern a little bit there. So, but overall, I feel like Justin Fields is going to have an exciting season as long as he stays healthy, as long as he's able to slide, and then make some is able to do a check down for God's sake. I feel like he can, that team with Justin Fields there can make a run there. So.
Well, I'm hoping for it. I mean, if they shatter any of my expectations, I'll be happy with that. And obviously, if they make the playoffs, that'd be incredible. So yeah, I hope this is like a fast track type of season. It's not just another building block year, but if they can really turn it up and take a real leap, that'd be awesome. Especially knowing that we hold Carolina's rights in some of next year's draft. I mean, that'll be a lot of fun to see where they end up and how we can kind of keep building this moving forward. But no, it sounds pretty good. Really good overview of the NFL based on team standings and also the playoffs. Kind of looking at some of the awards. I mean, we can just go down the line here, but kind of kicking it off. Who do you have as your NFL MVP this year?
Yeah, and you kind of teed it up, I think, with all this love from the Bengals. I feel like that we've been giving. I got Joey Burrow, like we mentioned, he has an offensive line now. He's got an offensive line now. I feel like, can they be healthy, like going to the playoffs? That's the big question because last season, they ran into some injuries on the offensive line, and that I feel like that's kind of what cost them a little bit there. So, but Orlando Brown. Really big guy there, and with all that wide receiver help, I feel like he's gonna, now it's what, like year 4, I think, or something like that for him. I think he's gonna ball out. I think he's gonna get 5,000 yards. I think he's gonna get 30, 40, maybe touchdowns or something like that. Still has Mixon there to help out, spell them from, I guess, like the defensive line just completely doing a complete pass rush on them. So I feel like they just have enough talent there for on the defensive side for Joe Burrow to get those touchdowns, to get those opportunities, and then also have the talent to actually execute on the offensive side. So yeah, I got Joe Burrow. I don't know. Do you have anybody else that isn't Joe Burrow? Because I feel like it's going to be a hard pill to swallow for anybody not Joe Burrow.
Yeah, no, for me it's Joe Burrow. I don't know if it's like a complete slam dunk. I like how things are trending for him this year, especially getting Jamar Chase back healthy. Obviously, like you said, new tackle. If Mixon happens to miss games based on some of his legal issues, like they could completely just go pass. I mean, they're not going to be probably handing the ball off 20 times to Chris Evans or Chase Brown, whoever else they got in the backfield. So in a lot of senses, without Mixon, a team without Mixon could actually even probably improve his passing numbers, improve his passing, scores and all that. So I've got Burrow, edging Patrick Mahomes. I think you could pencil in Patrick Mahomes every single year as NFL MVP, and I don't think anyone would really question it. But sometimes the voters and sometimes the league, want to give a new person the opportunity to have that honor, and I think Patrick Mahomes will kind of be the GOAT in that situation. Like, just, hey, I know I'm like MVP at heart here, but yeah, you can have the award. So yeah, I'm gonna go with some of the odds makers here and pick Joe Burrow too.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Patrick Mahomes, similar wide receiver core as I think he had last year. I think the key difference was I think Juju Smith-Schuster, but apart from that, like very similar wide receiver core there. I think another name, just to toss it out there, or a couple names maybe. I have thought about Justin Herbert, right? It's like I think he got hurt a couple times last season, right, and missed a couple games there. So full season with that squad, we'll see what happens with what Kellen Moore can do, right? I think Kellen Moore got a lot of the blame. I feel like in Dallas, some warranted, some not. So, but I think with this talented team that he has with the Chargers, I feel like there can be some explosion in terms of the offensive side, with the weapons of, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they have Quentin Johnston, and a pretty decent offensive line as well. And then, yeah, Eckler. So that's definitely, one name. And then another name out there is Lamar Jackson. If he can be healthy, under this new system with Todd Monken, right, passing a little bit more, I feel like he could do it again with the wide receiver talent. But we'll see. Again, I'm betting on Joe Burrow, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential prospects out there for MVP.
Yeah, I'd say Jalen Hurts also could find his name in that mix. Josh Allen, and then like you're saying, if the Bears make the playoffs, Justin Fields is probably going to get some votes there because if they happen to make the playoffs, he'll have a huge part in that, and his rushing numbers will probably show pretty favorably. But yeah, I'm going to stick with my gut here and kind of stay with Burrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, how about your offensive player of the year?
Yeah, I don't know if this has ever happened, but I'm actually gonna go with Jamar Chase here. So I don't know. I think you kind of convinced me a little bit there of, maybe Joe Burrow, with Higgins and such compared to Justin Jefferson. Maybe he's gonna be able to find Chase a little bit more. So I'm gonna go Jamar Chase. I think the odds makers have both Jamar Chase actually and Justin Jefferson with the same odds from last time I checked, so which is pretty interesting. But Jamar Chase, I think one thing to consider too is like how many times has there been, back-to-back offensive player of the years, right? Not too often. So, yeah, I feel like amongst everybody, Jamar Chase probably is the best possibility. I don't feel too good about any of the running backs really, unless Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if he joins was it the Packers or maybe the Miami Dolphins? I don't know, some team that he just explodes out on. But I don't anticipate that happening. So yeah, Jamar Chase I think is probably who I'm looking at there for offensive player of the year. What about you?
I actually did go with the running back in this situation. I picked Nick Chubb, and I picked Chubb because Cleveland has the number two ranked offensive line in the game. I think Deshaun Watson does enough with his feet and hopefully with his arm to open up a little bit more space for Chubb. But essentially, Chubb has zero competition. He's been a bell cow. He's been healthy. He always puts up, 1,200 yard plus seasons as a running back. This might be a year where he completely, breaks through the ceiling. I mean, he has no more Kareem Hunt to deal with. He's going to get the lion's share of all those carries. I even think, some of his hedge backs, the guys that are, kind of, backing him up are really not going to get a lot of totes. So it's like, at the end of the day, I feel like this is going to be Nick Chubb's season that everybody's going to keep their eyes on. If he approaches 2,000 yards rushing, I won't be super surprised. I mean, I feel like again, he doesn't do a whole ton when it comes to, receiving out of the backfield and in that sense, but I think rushing the ball, pounding the rock, getting those breakaway runs, and then scoring touchdowns can be what he does all season. And yeah, and in some ways, I'm a little, I did have the second overall pick in my fantasy draft. If I, was more at the turn on the back of the first round, I'd been so happy to get him. But I think he'll completely outperform a lot of what his fantasy analysts project him doing.
Yeah. I mean, he has like one of the best offensive lines too in the game. So, and maybe the Cleveland Browns, maybe they're like, we want to be a little bit more conservative. Deshaun Watson still a little rusty or something like that. Maybe that does happen. So maybe Nick Chubb they're like, yeah, let's just run with him with one of the best running backs in the entire game. So I do wonder about his like passing and such a little bit, or pass catching. Not as a player, but like compared to like maybe some other players. But I mean, if Derrick Henry can win, if he can put like Derrick Henry type of numbers right a couple years ago, I feel like why not give it to Nick Chubb a little bit there. I guess yeah. No other names, maybe Christian McCaffrey, right? That could be something with that 49ers team as well. That was another name I was considering there. So a full season with them, with one of the best offensive minds out there, I feel like. And then yeah, Brock Purdy. It's like, all right, you're gonna trust Brock Purdy with everything. A little bit with Christian McCaffrey. So, but yeah, overall, I think we both agree. Like, yeah, like Jamar Chase, or he could be a good one there. But yeah, Nick Chubb. Yeah, I think that's a solid pick there.
It'd be really fun too. I don't know if this has ever happened where an MVP is a quarterback, but the offensive player of the year is a quarterback. But I always see MVPs kind of also translating into wins. But if I have the Bears projected below 500, yet Justin Fields sets like the rushing record for a quarterback in a single season and has pretty good passing stats to boot, while he may not win the MVP given where his team's at, would they see him as being like, hey, you're just the most offensive, explosive offensive player in this game right now? Like he's just one of those dark horses. I feel like Jalen Hurts is more likely to vie for an MVP than he would an offensive player, unless he got both awards. But yeah, if we were just going off of like sheer output, which I feel like the offensive player of the year really is all about, I mean, Fields might get some votes there.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like Fields he probably does have a better chance of winning Offensive Player of the Year than MVP, just because it always feels like MVP. I think somebody did an analysis of that. I think MVP there was only one time an MVP like somebody won it with a losing team. I think it was like Adrian Peterson or something like that. I think it was like that
Mm.
season he got like close to 2,000 yards, and I don't think they had a winning team that season. So apart from that, it's like okay, you have to be breaking a record of some sort or doing like one of these monumental feats, or yeah, you're like the best offensive player out there, just racking up yards or touchdowns of some sort. So and then yeah, probably winning. So yeah, I feel like uh, Justin Fields could potentially. It's just yeah, MVP definitely is much more of a yeah, you got to be able to win. But yeah, offensive player, it's like it's all about the outputs, the yards, fantasy value, all that fun stuff. So.
No doubt. How about your defensive player of the year?
Yeah, Defensive Player of the Year. I mentioned his name before, but Micah Parsons. I think I had him last year, and I'm like, damn it, he's gonna get it eventually. So, I think Bosa got it last year. I think Parsons might have been second there, but full-time defensive end, Dan Quinn defense. This defense is still gonna rank pretty high, I anticipate. So, yeah, I just think Micah Parsons one of the most talented players out there, but now he's going to be focusing more on pass rushing, which he's really good at. So, and I just feel like yeah, he's going to get a few more sacks here and there, get a few more pressures, make more game altering plays there on the defensive side. So, so yeah, that's my pick. But yeah, who do you got for defensive player of the year there?
Ditto. Do you want to go over the offensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, I mean, hey, let's just keep it rolling. Offensive rookie of the year, man. I didn't want to pick like the number one guy here. I think everybody's been looking at like odds makers and all, but I there's just so many things going into this person's favor. Bijan, right? Like Bijan Robinson. That team is just so like it's like basically going to be focused on him. So it'll be really hard for him not to win it. I think the one concern, right, is injury, or maybe teams like almost overstack and just dare Desmond Ritter to like pass the ball a little bit, which hey, good for the team, but it might be in the sacrifice of Bijan Robinson's numbers a little bit. Or maybe one of the quarterbacks that got taken in the first round, maybe they just outperform all of them, but there's just a lot of question marks I feel like for all of them. So yeah, with me, Bijan, I think it's just one of those things that just make the most sense there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp here. I mean, I feel like any of the receivers are kind of being looked at as like number two, number three options. From this past draft, in their current offenses. Bijan will have what we think is the three down kind of role there. I mean, catching balls, being an incredible rusher. Hopefully, Atlanta is competent enough on offense to really make him a star, which I think he's destined for, just based on everything that I've heard about the kid. But if it's not him, I mean, it's hard not to look over in Carolina and think like, hey, if they get to a second place finish here, maybe they start to approach 500 ball or something, and Bryce Young puts together a competent enough season. Like, I think he could make a case for himself too. I think of the rookie quarterbacks, while I may not see him in the long term being a fixture, maybe I don't see the same upside as what I've kind of been hearing. I do like CJ Stroud. I think when he's able to kind of get himself up to speed, build a team around him somewhat, I think he'll be what I think is the better prospect of the two. But all that said, if Bryce Young can show that he can be competent and put together a pretty decent first year, I mean, I think he's got a puncher's chance too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good conversation to have, right? Is who's going to have the better quarterback season from number one and number two picks there, right? With CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. So, because yeah, both offenses, I think, there's some weapons here and there's some veteran presences here there. Like we have Robert Woods for the Texans. Nico's shown some good light there. They also added Devin Singletary, and that Houston Texans offensive line is pretty talented and stacked there. So Dalton Schultz as well. So I feel like there's been a lot of good moves. I feel like that the Texans have made. And then we talked about the Carolina Panthers as well previously. Pretty decent line overall. They signed Miles Sanders, who could be a three-down back. We'll see how they kind of utilize him there. And then Aaron Thielen, DJ Chark. There's been some talks about Mingo, being a little bit kind of like a dark horse. I don't want to say rookie of the year, just a big contributor in terms of wide receivers. So there's some talent there for both sides. But if I were to pick on who would have a better season, I would actually pick, even though Bryce Young has like Frank Reich and everything over there, I kind of like CJ Stroud's chances. I feel like in terms of just having more passing yards, having maybe a few more touchdowns, and just outperforming again because best left tackle in the game, and then also I like their running back room a little bit more, with Singletary and Pierce there too. So. Yeah, interesting. I think what would happen with the offensive rookies there. One call out though is also Zay Flowers. He could be like, I don't know. He's twitchy as hell, and I love it. And again, if Lamar Jackson's healthy, if they're able to pass effectively, Zay Flowers could be an interesting watch there. But I think there's a little bit too many wide receivers in that room for him to get like a significant amount of receptions there. But yeah, definitely gonna go Bijan for me at least.
Yeah, and Anthony Richardson, it's like he's obviously the talk of fantasy in terms of like a mid round quarterback flyer and somebody who could be, a great rusher at the quarterback spot. It'll be interesting to see what he does at the NFL level. At the very least, I feel like he's got a pretty decent floor in terms of his rushing ability. He might be able to compile a lot of rushing yards over the course of however many games he ends up playing. The passing stats will obviously be the thing that goes under the microscope. I mean, he's got Michael Pittman there, who I think's reliable, but other than that, I mean, Alec Pierce, interesting. Is he elite? Is he good to above average? Like possibly. So we'll just have to see. We'll see how that year plays out in Indy, but no, I think the rookie of the year. I think we've got it. We got it right here on our prediction, and we'll keep it at that. How about defensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, defensive rookie of the year. For me, I thought about Will Anderson a little bit, and I think he's the favorite, but I'm gonna go a little bit of a different route here. I'm gonna go Tyree Wilson. Uh, Tyree Wilson, physical specimen. I think we touched on a little bit on that when we were talking about the draft before. He's in a pretty interesting situation though. I think there on the Raiders, he's got Chandler Jones, he's got Max Crosby, and he doesn't have to always play on the edge. So I think on passing downs, I think he'll be able to slide into the interior and get some sacks from there too. With Chandler Jones and then Crosby on the edges. So I think that could be an interesting pass rush. So from a numbers perspective, like I was looking at Will Anderson, I'm like, teams are gonna like identify him right off the bat. They're gonna be like, all right, we're not gonna let Will Anderson beat us on the pass rush side. We're gonna let any of their other players get to the quarterback except Will Anderson. But with Tyree Wilson, I feel like it's a little bit different circumstances with those two veterans there. So me, Tyree Wilson, and I will say I did predict Sauce Gardner last year, so I feel like I have a good streak going on now. So yeah, Tyree Wilson, I think defensive player of the year.
All right. Yeah, I like the boldness in the prediction. Obviously, a very explosive D-line candidate coming out of the draft last year. Bears had their eye on him, obviously, and ultimately passed. I think for me, I mean, kind of looking at what happened last year with the voting, obviously going to Sauce Gardner, Tariq Woolen was in the mix for that. I think maybe voters are starting to change the perspective on what it means to be the defensive player of the year because I feel like it tends less to the overall stats and more towards the impact that player had, on his defense. And if there's one guy I'm looking at, and it's the one guy who slipped through our fingers, somebody's going to step into a role that's needed this year to fill the void of Javon Hargrave. A lot of pressure is going to be placed on Jalen Carter. And obviously, I think he's got the talent and the infrastructure around him to just kind of fully succeed from day one. So I'm going to go incredibly bullish here. I'm not sure what the odds makers are saying really about this one, but I got Jalen Carter. I got Jalen Carter winning the Defensive Player of the Year. I think it's going to be one of the biggest regrets the Bears have made, as far as drafting and doing the big trade and everything like that. I just think he lives up to all the hype, all the expectations, and we feel that in his first season. So yeah, I'll leave that right there.
Yeah, for the record, I think Jalen Carter is actually third. He's actually third on the lines for Rookie of the Year. It's Will Anderson, number one. Tyree Wilson, actually, number two. So apparently Vegas has the same thought process as me. And then Jalen Carter at three, and then Jack Campbell actually as well, and then Devin Smith. So it should be interesting, I think, because he's in a great situation, and similar situation as Tyree Wilson with several veterans kind of around him. So he's going to get some single coverage, and if any of the draft scouts are right, like this is the most talented defensive line prospect in years. So and if that's going to happen, then he's going to get some sacks, going to get some pressures, going to get some run stuffing up there. So I think that's a good pick. And you sound a little bit bitter there, I feel like. So I get it. I get it though.
No, not me. Not me. Yeah. I'm not a bitter Bears fan, man. Not me. Not a bitter Chicago fan.
Yeah. So, but it'd be interesting. I definitely like the boldness of your pick too. So,
man, yeah, it still boggles my mind, man. And that feeling I had on draft day, just feeling like a kid who didn't get what he wanted for Christmas, like opening up the last gift and just sigh, big sigh. But we'll see, man. Yeah. Hopefully Darnell Wright is like just our cornerstone lineman for 10 years or more here, and Jalen Carter's a complete bust. Like, I'm really hoping for that, but yeah, it's hard for me to see it. But finally on my list of awards, I put Coach of the Year. So Wayne, who's yours?
I got our coach. I got Matt Eberflus. I had to go with him, Part of it is the record, right? It's like, okay, he got us into the playoffs, like just sneaked right in there, beating out Commanders, beating out Vikings, and Giants there. So yeah, I had to go with Matt Eberflus. Like I mentioned before, I think with regards to the defense, it always seemed like, when he was the Colts, he had a reputation of like taking enough talent and just maximizing it there. So, and I kind of feel like we're in a similar situation right now, although I feel like, our secondary is pretty good and our linebacking crew is pretty good. It's just our defensive line, it's like, a little bit of a hodgepodge, I feel like, of players there. But yeah, he's a maximizer of defensive talent. Last year we traded away like all our veteran presences there, right? With with Robert Quinn, I think was a big one there too, and then Roquan Smith. So it's like, we were kind of expecting our defense and our team to be bad. Now we kind of went the flip side. So now it's like, we didn't we beat the 49ers last year? That's kind of hard to like recall exactly, but we did beat them, albeit it was like in really like astronomically different, weather conditions, right? So, and that was like before all these trades and stuff were happening. So that just goes to show of like how much of I guess, we were just like, we're going to tank. We're going to go all Arizona Cardinals this year and just tank. So Matty Eberflus, I feel like he's my pick because I think the Bears will have a better season, a lot better win ratio than they had last year. So that's my thought there. Who do you got for Coach of the Year for yourself?
Yeah, just staying in the NFC North. I'm gonna take the division winners. Dan Campbell as my Coach of the Year. I really, after watching the Hard Knocks last season with that team, man, I know they're in our division. They've kind of been the punching bag for many years there. It was just cool to see how he kind of runs his locker room, how he treats his guys, how he, competes with his guys at practice, doing push-up competitions. He is, practicing what he preaches in a lot of ways, and I think that's the ultimate way to gain respect in the NFL. Um, yeah, I think he can really relate, and I think it'll transfer over into this year, translate into double-digit wins. I'm projecting out for the Detroit Lions. I think they lock up the number 3 spot in the conference, and I think they get their first playoff win in what feels like maybe our entire lifetime. So yeah, I think the Detroit Lions are on the rise, and I think this will be you know the first year of kind of that growth for this team, and will be interesting to see like how long can Goff stay under center for them, and will there ever be you know a next step over to like a Hendon Hooker, or is it somebody else coming in to you know be their quarterback of the future? But if anything, Goff is competent and definitely looked very good last year, and we'll see if he can build on that.
Yeah, no, Dan Campbell's an interesting pick. I mean, it's just because like I feel like last year, right? And I don't know why he wasn't acknowledged last year because the Lions made the playoffs, right? And they had that push of just winning in the second half of the season, if I recall correctly. So, last year, right? It was like I'm looking at the nominations and who the winner was, right? Winner was Brian Dable. Nominees were Sean McDermott, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni, and I'm like Dan Campbell like pulled this team out of nobody really predicted them to perform the way that they did, and I don't get why there was not enough conversation there. So I could see Dan Campbell in a way. I mean, I think the one thing is like a lot of people are projecting the Lions to like win the division, right? So for me, it's like yeah, whoop de do there, but at the same time, I almost feel like this is kind of like a giving Leonardo DiCaprio the Oscar for The Revenant. It's like this wasn't his best acting job, but he deserves it. So I feel like that's what it would be for Dan Campbell, just because when people saw, I think he made that like awesome speech, right, where his team won. I think they like won like 1 or 2 games, I believe, that season. He just made like an awesome speech, and everybody was like, "Oh, this guy's going to be." I think it was like his first season as a coach, and now we've seen those seeds that he instilled in that team culture kind of come to fruition. So for me, probably long overdue. Did Brian Dable deserve it last year? Probably, but yeah, like he's always been a good coach, Dan Campbell has. So yeah.
Yeah. They ultimately were 9-8 last year, and just fell short of the playoffs. But no, I agree with you. I think he definitely earned it last year. If he gets it this year, it's kind of making up for last season in a lot of ways. But no, I think of the teams that will appear higher up in the standings than they usually are, like a New Orleans. Like I don't think like Dennis Allen may get some votes, but like again, that's kind of like by default we're just giving you this because you showed up and
Uh,
decided to win the NFC South or something. So it's kind of tough because you still have a lot of these teams that are just, again, they're just penciled in for the 1 or 2 seeds, and there's nothing else you can really say or do about it. So it makes this
right.
kind of decision tough to you know uh, award, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, all right, any team from the NFC South, great, you won it, but you know, uh, somebody was about to win it just by default. Whether it's Frank Reich and the Carolina Panthers or something. So yeah, somebody's gonna win it, and I
Yeah.
just doubt anybody's gonna be like, oh, that guy was the coach of the year. Like, I just don't think that's gonna happen. So unless they do win like 10 games or something like that, then yeah, give them the award. So
I think it's kind of a BS award, just in general. Like, why not treat it like why not treat it like the MVP of coaches? Like, why won't you just look at Andy Reid and be like, "Damn, man, if I had the first pick for a coach, it'd be you." And it's
yeah,
because you're the 1 seed and because you won the Super Bowl last year, and you've had a
yeah.
15-year, remarkable run as an Eagles coach, Chiefs coach. Like, it should really be about that, I think, and I just feel like it's now becoming like the hot potato to the new playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, 100% is. I think you're right. I think that's the thing. It's like how many times would Bill Belichick have won the award though? Like over the course of his career, right? I think that's like the one reason why, specifically to the Coach of the Year, because some coaches can be coaching for decades, right? So like Mike Tomlin has never won Coach of the Year. Like it doesn't make sense. So like this guy
Yeah.
who's like I think the second longest tenured, if I'm correct, like with obviously Bill Belichick, right? Yeah, like Mike Tomlin, like he's been there for more than a decade and has won I think multiple Super Bowls. So like, how is he not? And he's never had a losing season too. Like, how is he not won Coach of the Year? Like, yeah, make that make sense to me. So I agree with you 100% for Coach of the Year at least.
Well, sounds good. Well, I think that's kind of a wrap for this season. Kind of looking at it holistically, and from now until we get to the Super Bowl and all the awards to come. So, I guess with that we can you know end here on the NFL and kind of move into our final thoughts for tonight.
Yeah. I think one final thought I had, I was just thinking about, we're coming into fall, it's football season and everything. Things are warming up or being cold. Now we got to warm up a little bit. I think pumpkin spice lattes are back in the game now. So, Pat, I want to hear from you. What fall beverage do you like the most? Whether you believe it's underrated or it's old fashioned, it just warms your heart. What fall beverage do you enjoy the most?
I think it's properly rated. I think it's at its ADP if we were drafting it in a fantasy draft of some kind. But like, apple cider this time of year, I don't care if it's cold. I don't care if it's warmed up. I just enjoy it. I think it, helps to ring in the fall, but it's also, good with a lot of different types of foods. I mean, I feel like anything fruit or vegetable related, it's a good pairing. Like dessert, it always goes well there, especially if it's warmed up. Being outside and just having some is kind of nice, but it's just it's a throwback. It's kind of growing up in the '90s in Chicagoland, kind of fall conditions, and football is right here and all that good stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna go with apple cider.
Man, that's exactly what I was probably gonna say. Although I will say I like it warm. Like it's gotta be warm for me. It is a little bit chilly. I need something to warm me up. Might as well be a nice little apple cider there. So I definitely want that warmth from the apple cider. But no, I 100% agree. I feel like you know people will go after the pumpkin spice latte. Fine, go be all basic and stuff. But for me, I'll be a little old fashioned. Give me a nice warm apple cider, and then we'll go for a nice long walk or something. So, yeah, that sounds good, man.
Sounds good. Yeah, for my final thought, I have a gripe to pick with a company that I'm actually fond of, but am now starting to feel uh, it's a little like perturbed about. I actually ended up ordering some sports merchandise and have done so for the last few years from Fanatics, and it all came in the mail, and I got a like an array of different shirts that represent the White Sox, the Bears, and all the teams that I'm usually buying merch for. But one of my shirts ended up, kind of coming in a little bit tight. It didn't feel, like something I would want to fit into, especially after it's been through the washer dryer, whatever it is. But so I went to go return it, and I got this pop up that said you have two options. You can either return the item, through your local delivery service and get a store credit for the amount of the shirt, or we can give you your money back, but we're going to charge you $10 in order to do that. So I kind of just like, had to double take it really quickly because I'm like, am I really reading this correctly? Like, you're going to charge me $10 on like a $30 item just to hand it back to you? Like, it's pretty fucked up, man. I just like, I lost a lot of respect for the company. I kind of want to just put them on blast. I mean, if this goes viral, that'd be amazing because I'm just wondering, Wayne, like, are there companies that you've dealt with, like, in the recent past that had similar, like, fee structures or just like, you know, kind of what's the good word for this? Like there are
Bullshit.
like strings attached, you know? Like, yeah, this is bullshit, dude. This is complete bullshit. Like, dude, like the strings attached there, just what does it force me to do? It forces me to take the store credit. Of course, I'm a
Yeah.
customer. I don't mind. I'll probably get something in the future, but hey, like I'm a loyal customer of yours, and this time I just want my money back. Like, give me my money
Yeah.
back in full.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I've been trying to, I think, unsubscribe from the Chicago Tribune for years now, but they make it so damn hard, right? Like you actually have to like you actually have to like call them or something like that, or physically go there. I think we would just live in this day and age, right? And I get, newspapers that are, they're kind of struggling. Like not everybody's like, oh, I want to pay for, to read this article and stuff. I get all that. But at the same time, they make it so damn hard. Like they want me to like email or call somebody as opposed to like, Netflix and all these streaming services, right? You just click on a button. It's like, oh, let me pause my service or something like that. At least they give that option. Or, maybe cancel. But no, for like, a lot of these newspaper companies like Chicago Tribune, it's like, no, you have to actually manually like do stuff. And same thing with gym memberships too. I think LA Fitness. I remember canceling that, and I think I had to like mail something in. I had to like mail in like, oh, I want to cancel my membership. I'm like, it's a gym membership. Like, does it have to be that hard? Like, you just don't go and don't pay. Like, that's it. But they really just try to make things as hard as possible. So you just forget, and the checks kind of keep coming in for them. So, yeah, I get all that, man. That's Fanatics, huh? How about that? Those guys.
Yeah, Fanatics. So we're gonna put them on blast here. Hopefully, this gets a little bit of attention. But yeah, to add a little bit more to these types of company, I mean, like breaking up with your cable provider, it's got to be one of the most painful things to do. I had a 20-minute conversation with a rep of theirs, and he seriously went through a circle of different offers and circular type communication with me where I just kind of lost my cool and I like couldn't stand anymore. My guy, like, I've heard all your offers. I don't care anymore. Get me off this. I want out. Like, how much more clear do I need to make this? And then he kind of tried to twist it back around on me, make me feel bad for calling him out or something. Like, he's using all sorts of like psychological tactics to either guilt trip me or to whatever he could kind of do to keep me on the line or something. And man, it's just an awful way to do business. It sucks that some of these companies have that kind of leverage or power in a sense, like over the consumer. It's just garbage, dude. And yeah, I don't want to begrudgingly do business with any sort of company, to be honest with you.
So who are you going to take your business to now instead of Fanatics? Now we're gonna put them on blast now, huh?
And I mean, you could go to Lids, you could go to, I'm trying to think, like, I mean, Amazon definitely has a lot of different sports merch on there. Although, I don't want to monopolize my spending power on just one company. Although Amazon does make everything so easy for you as the consumer in terms of returning and giving you, all your money back in full and stuff. But it's probably because they've got that monopolistic type power. So, yeah, it's probably kind of baked into their business model. But anyways, yeah, go to the outlet malls, go to a traditional mall, if you will. I mean, there's definitely a mom and pop sports store in my local mall, which has just complete racks of jerseys from past and present. It's just impressive, dude. Like, I feel really bad for this guy because I feel like his doors might shut based on, probably his like current revenues and everything. But man, what a cool like just wall and selection of jerseys. I'm just impressed every time I go in there.
Yeah. Do you see any Sam Howell jerseys in there at all, or?
I'll have to find out. I mean, if he can get the Washington Commanders up to the 3 seed in the NFC East, maybe I will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had some Fields jerseys. I mean, he had stuff from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s in
Mm,
terms of players and stuff, like a really impressive selection. But again, like it's hard to find like a consistent customer that's looking to spend like 150, $200 on a shirt, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, I mean, yeah, if you're looking at like sports, memorabilia and stuff like that, I actually had one friend. Apparently, like her dad bought a bunch of like White Sox gear and stuff like that, and she just wants to give it to me apparently. So, uh, you know, uh, tune in for more. Maybe we'll do some giveaways or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's like one thing about sports, like memorabilia, and there's like a Netflix show about that too now. I don't know if you've seen it. I forget what it's called, but it's like this person they're like kind of like an auctioneer for sports memorabilia, and then they also like were venturing into like tech as well, like original Apple computers, things like that, and just very like cool collector's items. So interesting field. I forget what the name of the show is, but yeah, definitely check it out. Like Netflix and some sports memorabilia show there. So, but yeah, things we give our money to, man.
Yeah, and all the things we don't know we give our money to as well. So
Yeah, yeah,
consumers, just keep your eyes out there. Like keep your eyes open if you see hidden fees or difficult customer service processes like this, or like what was Wayne, what Wayne was covering with some of his examples. Like we gotta keep these companies accountable to just making things easy and transparent and somewhat fair for us to kind of get our money back in some of these situations.
yeah, yeah. A little bit of respect and dignity. Come on now. Yeah.
It's not the American way, but we'll deal with it. But anyways, this has been a great show. Obviously, really excited about football starting next Thursday. Fantasy drafts are kind of in the books. Folks, if you're still around, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know who you think is going to be, heading up all these divisions, who's going to be in the Super Bowl this year, winning it all. Awards, who do you got? Yeah, and if you're on YouTube right now, check out our fantasy episode that we aired in the past week or so. Help you prepare for your 12 team half PPR mock drafts, or real drafts you have coming up this week. So yeah, I guess with Wayne, I'm Patrick as always for the Ball and Breakfast podcast.